The courtroom was hushed, though filled with people. The press sat near the back, their lenses ready, notebooks open. The air was thick with a mix of anticipation and discomfort. This wasn't just another case. This was the kind of trial that cracked even the most seasoned jurors. The kind where innocence had been shattered and justice teetered on the fragile testimony of someone too young to understand the weight of a courtroom. The bailiff cleared his throat and opened the heavy wooden doors. Every eye turned. In the doorway stood a petite little girl, barely 3 years old, her cheeks round, her expression blank, and her body dwarfed by a lavender coat with little star patches sewn on by hand. Her name was Emily. She held tightly to the hand of her social worker, Miss Cara Daniels, a woman in her late 30s, whose jaw had been locked tight since 7 a.m. that morning. Cara was good at what she did. She'd worked with dozens of traumatized children over the years, but Emily was different. For months, the little girl hadn't spoken a single word. Not during her intake, not during therapy, not even when given toys or crayons. She would nod sometimes. She would cry silently at night. But she hadn't spoken until now. No one knew what, if anything, she might say. The judge, a firm but kind-eyed man named Judge Renner, watched the small figure as she slowly stepped toward the witness box. She didn't look at anyone, not at the lawyers, not at the gallery, not at the defendant, a man in a blue suit who looked too polished, too smug for the charges he faced. Her eyes remained fixed on the ground until they flickered and then froze. That's when she saw him, a golden retriever, lying calmly beside the stand. His coat was thick and clean, his harness labeled Therapy K-9 in bold white lettering. His name was Max. He had been trained for this, not to sniff out bombs or drugs, but to soothe the broken, the scared, and the forgotten. He had sat beside veterans reliving wartime horrors. He had laid under the feet of abused teens, testifying against violent parents. But he had never been in the presence of someone so young, so heartbreakingly quiet. Emily stopped walking. Cara knelt beside her, whispering softly, "It's okay, sweetie. That's Max. He's a good dog. He's here just for you." Max looked up, his deep brown eyes locking with Emily's. He didn't move or bark. He just looked and waited. A long moment. Nothing happened. The judge was about to suggest a recess when Emily let go of Cara's hand and took a tiny step forward. Then another dot, then another. She reached the stand, eyes still on Max, and knelt beside him, placing a trembling hand on his fur. Max didn't flinch. He simply wagged his tail once, gently, as if to say, "I see you. I'm here." And that's when it happened. Soft as a breeze through a cracked window, Emily whispered, "He's nice, not scary." Gasps echoed across the courtroom. Cara's eyes widened. The stenographer looked at the judge in disbelief. Judge Renner held up a hand to pause the proceedings. Stunned. It was the first thing Emily had said aloud in 128 days. Max leaned into her hand, his body still relaxed. Emily slowly sat on the stand, her little legs swinging slightly. Her eyes hadn't even drifted to the man in the defendant's chair. Did she just? The prosecutor whispered, blinking tears from her eyes. She spoke, Cara whispered. Back, barely able to believe it herself, the judge leaned toward the microphone. "Ms. Daniels, will she be willing to proceed?" Cara nodded slowly. I think she might." Judge Renner turned to the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are pausing for a brief 10-minute recess. When we resume, the witness will testify with the K-9 in place." As the judge stood and left the bench, the gallery erupted with low murmurs. Reporters began scribbling furiously, and camera crews outside started filming updates. A young child, thought to be too traumatized to even enter the courtroom, had just spoken, and not to the judge, not to a lawyer, but to a dog. Kara crouched beside Emily again. "You did amazing, sweetheart. Do you want some water?" Emily didn't answer, but she nodded. A small thing, but another leap forward. Max stayed seated. His presence wasn't commanding, but comforting, like a soft blanket on a cold night. He'd been with Emily for barely 5 minutes, and already something in her had cracked open. Not broken, but released. The court photographer, permitted one still photo per day by law, captured the image just before the break. Emily, one hand still resting on Max's fur, looking at him with the sort of innocence that made you ache. That photo would later appear on front pages across the country with the headline, "Courage on the Stand." Outside the courtroom, one of the jurors, a mother of 2, wept quietly, saying to a nearby reporter, "I don't care what happens next. That child is the bravest soul I've ever seen." Inside, Emily sat quietly while Kara helped her. With her water cup, Max lay at her feet, tail gently thumping now and then. No one rushed. No one demanded answers. For the first time in months, Emily was in control, and she had found her voice not through interrogation or pressure, but through warmth, through connection, through a dog who didn't need words to understand her pain. And somewhere deep, in the gallery, a woman clutched her chest and whispered, "God bless that dog." Little did they know, this was just the beginning. The courtroom settled again after recess, though no one had truly relaxed. The air still buzzed with disbelief. People whispered as though afraid that raising their voices might shatter the fragile miracle that had just occurred. Emily, the silent little girl in the lavender coat, had spoken. But what mattered more than the words was who she had spoken to, not the attorneys, not the judge, not her social worker, but to Max, the K-9 therapy dog lying at her feet. And what she said, "He's nice, not scary," echoed louder in everyone's minds than any shouted testimony could. Judge Renner resumed his seat, adjusting his glasses as he peered gently toward the witness stand. "Ms. Daniels," he began, addressing Kara softly, "do you believe the witness is able and willing to proceed today?" Kara crouched beside Emily, brushing a loose curl from the girl's cheek. Emily didn't answer with words, but she looked up, eyes flickering with something fragile and new. Trust. She nodded. "She's ready, Your Honor," Kara said, though her voice trembled with uncertainty. The judge gave a warm nod. "Then, let us proceed. Gentle and respectful questioning only." The courtroom collectively held its breath. The prosecutor, a composed and motherly woman named Jessica Park, stepped forward. She'd prosecuted over 50 abuse cases in her career, but she'd never addressed a witness like this. She took off her heels before approaching. It was a small gesture, but a meaningful one. She wouldn't tower over this child. She knelt beside the witness stand and looked not at Emily, but at Max. "Well, hello, Max," she said with a smile. "You're doing a wonderful job." Max blinked slowly, tail wagging once in acknowledgement. Emily watched closely. Jessica turned to her. "Hi, Emily. My name's Jessica. I'm here to help tell your story, okay? Would it be all right if I ask you some questions?" Emily's hand, still resting on Max's back, didn't move. Then she gave a small nod. Jessica smiled. "Thank you. You're very brave." There was a pause. Then Jessica glanced at her notes and gently asked, "Emily, do you remember the night when the police came to your house?" Emily's face twitched. Her eyes darted down, then toward Max. He hadn't moved an inch. His body was still, calm, present, like a golden statue full of quiet power. She nodded again. "Was someone hurting Mommy that night?" Jessica asked gently. Emily opened her mouth, paused, and whispered, "The man. Was he loud?" Jessica asked softly. Emily's eyes grew wide. He was yelling. Mommy was crying. A gasp escaped from somewhere in the gallery. The judge immediately raised his hand. Quiet in the court. But the impact had already been felt. The room had heard the voice of a child who'd seen too much and was slowly, bravely saying it out loud. Jessica leaned a bit closer. Can you tell me, where were you when the yelling happened? Emily's voice shook. Behind the couch with Teddy. Your stuffed bear? Jessica clarified. Emily nodded. Then, for the first time, she said a full sentence. I covered Teddy's ears. Jessica's throat tightened. She blinked quickly, willing her emotions down. That was very brave, Emily, and Max is proud of you, too. Emily glanced down at Max, who remained as calm and steady as ever. She gave a tiny smile, just a flicker, and the courtroom seemed to breathe again. The defense attorney rose abruptly. Your Honor, I'd like to object to. Denied, Judge Renner interrupted firmly. Sit down, counselor. Jessica continued. Emily, do you remember what the man did after he yelled? Emily paused. Then, barely above a whisper, she said, he pushed Mommy. She fell. And then what? Emily's bottom lip quivered. She stopped moving. Silence. Jessica swallowed hard. Did the man see you? Emily shook her head. I was quiet. You did very well, sweetheart. No more questions, Your Honor. The judge nodded, then turned to the defense attorney, a thin man with slick-back hair and a look of frustration creeping over his features. Defense may cross-examine, Judge Renner said. He approached slowly, clearly uncomfortable. He hadn't expected this girl to say anything, let alone speak with clarity. Still, he pressed on. Emily, did you see the man's face that night? Emily tensed. Max shifted slightly and leaned closer against her leg. Emily's eyes narrowed. He had black shoes, she said, almost automatically. The attorney blinked. Black shoes? Shiny. She touched her lavender sleeve nervously. He always had shiny shoes. Jessica glanced at the police report. The man, her mother's boyfriend, had been arrested wearing black patent leather shoes. A detail Emily had never been told. She remembered. The defense attorney tried one last tactic. Emily, did you ever hear your mommy say she was okay? Emily shook her head. She was quiet. Then there were sirens. The defense attorney sighed. No further questions. He didn't dare push further. He was losing. Everyone could see it. No one wanted to be the man who made a 3-year-old cry in public. The judge leaned forward. Emily, thank you for being so brave. You may step down. But Emily didn't move. Instead, she looked around the room, not in fear, but in calm. Then, with a child's soft simplicity, she asked, Can Max come too? The judge smiled warmly. Yes, sweetheart. Max can come with you. Emily climbed down, holding on to Max's harness. She walked down the aisle like a quiet storm, leaving stunned silence in her wake. No one moved. No one breathed. Everyone just watched. The gallery broke into quiet sniffles. Some reporters cried. Even the hardened bailiff wiped his eyes. As Emily and Max exited the courtroom together, something shifted, not just in the trial, but in everyone who witnessed it. Justice wasn't always loud. Sometimes it arrived as a whisper. Sometimes it came with golden fur and a child's first step back into the light. The hallway outside the courtroom echoed with quiet footsteps as Kara gently guided Emily toward a waiting room. Max padded beside them, silent and steady. The press remained outside the courthouse, cameras rolling, but inside, time felt suspended. Like the world was waiting to exhale, Emily clutched Max's fur the entire walk. The golden retriever didn't bark, didn't nudge, just walked loyally by her side. tail swaying in calm arcs like a metronome set to safety. When they reached the room, Kara opened the door to a small space filled with soft chairs and a table of snacks and juice boxes. Emily ignored them. She knelt beside Max, wrapped her arms around his neck, and whispered something no one else could hear. Kara wiped at her eyes and crouched beside them. "You were incredible in there, Emily. I'm so proud of you. Everyone is." Emily pulled back and looked at Kara for the first time, not with confusion or fear, but curiosity. "Was I loud?" she asked. Kara's breath caught. "No, sweet girl, you were just right." It wasn't only Emily's words that had moved the courtroom. It was the calm force behind them, the clarity. Her voice, fragile but unflinching, had pierced the fog that usually clung to cases like this. Her memories, while fractured and young, had drawn a vivid outline of the man accused of abusing her mother. And perhaps Emily, too. Now, that voice, once locked inside her, had returned. Slowly, carefully, but undeniably. Inside the courtroom, prosecutors gathered, stunned. Jessica Park sipped her coffee, barely tasting it. "I don't know how that dog does it," she murmured. "But without him, we wouldn't have heard a thing." She spoke more in that 15 minutes than we've seen in 3 months of interviews, a detective added, glancing at the door. "It's like something in her unlocked." Jessica nodded. "No, someone unlocked her." Max. The golden retriever's photo was already being shared on social media. News outlets were scrambling to cover the story. The quiet girl who hadn't spoken since the night of the assault had now become a key witness in a case that had nearly been dismissed due to lack of testimony. Back in the waiting room, Emily sipped apple juice as Max lay beside her feet, his chin resting gently on her tiny sneakers. "Do I have to go back in?" she asked softly. "Maybe one more time tomorrow," Kara said gently. "Only if you feel okay." Emily looked down. "If Max goes, I can go." Kara smiled. "He'll always go with you. That's his job." Emily giggled, a tiny sound like wind chimes. "I think he's magic." Kara blinked fast, trying not to cry. "Me too, sweetheart." That evening, the courtroom was empty, but the world outside buzzed like a hive. Reporters stood in the courtyard, delivering live updates. This trial has taken a dramatic turn after a 3-year-old girl unexpectedly took the stand and delivered emotional testimony. Her words and the presence of a K-9 named Max have already begun reshaping how trauma witnesses are treated in courtrooms across the state. The story was too human, too powerful to ignore. It struck something in people, a reminder that courage didn't always wear a badge or a suit. Sometimes it came dressed in a child's lavender coat, holding the paw of a golden retriever. That night, Emily slept soundly for the first time in months. Max stayed nearby, curled up in his portable bed beside her temporary foster home. He didn't make a sound. He didn't need to. Inside her dreams, Emily saw a house without shouting, a room without broken glass, a dog that listened and stayed. The next morning the courthouse buzzed early. Emily arrived holding Max's leash this time, her own idea. Kara walked beside her, stunned by the shift. She wanted to dress herself. Kara whispered to Officer Jenkins, Max's handler, and she asked when she could come back to talk more. Officer Jenkins nodded slowly. "That's Max. He builds bridges where there's nothing but fear." Emily wore a pink sweater and purple jeans. She had tied a ribbon on Max's harness. When asked about it, she said, "He needed to look handsome for today." Inside the courtroom, Judge Renner welcomed her gently. "Hello again, Emily." "Hi," she said, louder this time. She walked to the witness stand with Max at her side. There was no hesitation now, just calm. She sat confidently, as if the seat was made for her. The ribbon on Max's back wagged as much as his tail. Jessica smiled and approached again. Emily, do you feel okay to talk a little more today? Emily nodded. Max says I'm strong. The courtroom melted. Can you tell us what happened when the police came? I heard the sirens. I ran to the door. And what did you? See? A man tried to leave, but the police said, stop. And Mommy? She was sleeping, but not like bedtime. Jessica paused. Were you scared? Emily nodded. But Max says scared doesn't mean stop. The judge tilted, his head slightly. Did she just say? Jessica nodded. Yes, Your Honor. Emily looked at Max. He talks in here. She touched her chest dot, and no one questioned it, because somehow Max had become more than a dog. He was her voice when she needed one, her confidence when words failed, her heartbeat when fear closed in. The testimony continued, short but profound. Each answer built the case. Each sentence cemented the truth. By the time she stepped down, everyone knew the outcome was already taking shape. As they walked out of the room again, reporters craned to glimpse her. But Emily didn't look scared. She looked whole. She clutched Max's harness with one hand, and in her other, she held something new. A crayon drawing. Picture of her, holding hands with Max, the words written across the top, in a wobbly 3-year-old scrawl, my best friend. Max wasn't just a dog. He was a bridge. While the world celebrated Emily's courage, few knew how Max had come to sit at the foot of a witness stand that day. His journey had begun long before her first word was whispered into the silent courtroom. Max was born in a litter of 9, bred not for competition or hunting, but for calm, for connection. From an early age, he showed traits that few dogs possess. He didn't flinch at loud noises. He didn't startle at sudden movement. And when people cried, he leaned in, not away. By 6 months old, trainers at the Paws of Peace K-9 therapy program had already labeled him exceptional. Max doesn't just listen, one trainer said. He reads people. He senses pain and moves toward it. At 18 months, Max completed his advanced therapy certification. He'd been stationed at children's hospitals, counseling centers, and eventually, courthouses, places not meant for laughter, but where healing still tried to bloom. His handler, Officer Paul Jenkins, had served for nearly 2 decades. A former detective turned trauma response officer, Jenkins knew firsthand how the criminal justice system could overlook victims too broken or too young to speak. Max became Jenkins' partner, not in chasing down suspects, but in drawing out truth. Together, they'd helped over 30 children testify in court. But none like Emily. She's the youngest I've seen come this far. Jenkins told the local news the morning after Emily's second testimony. And I've never seen Max bond with someone that fast. It's like they knew each other in another life. Reporters pressed for interviews. Photos of Emily and Max circulated with headlines like, Golden Heart, Therapy Dog Unlocks Voice of Young Abuse Victim. More than a pet, the dog who silenced a courtroom with hope. But Max didn't care about headlines. He didn't understand fame. He simply knew that when Emily touched his fur, she calmed. When she trembled, he leaned against her. When she spoke, he stayed still, her anchor in a world that had once spun out of control. Inside the jury room, the jurors sat in near silence after Emily's second testimony. For hours, they had listened to clinical evidence, medical reports, 911 calls, expert analysis, but none of it hit with the same force as the girl's soft voice. She wasn't coached, said one juror, a middle-aged schoolteacher. You can't fake that kind of fear. Courage. Another juror, a retired firefighter, added, I've seen trauma in adults. That little girl? She didn't just survive. She showed up. And the dog? Someone asked. He was her strength. said the teacher. He gave her permission to speak. The room was unanimous. Emily's testimony wasn't just admissible, it was decisive. A program under fire. Until now, before Emily's case, not everyone supported K-9 South in courtrooms. Some legal experts had argued that dogs could sway juries emotionally, casting children as victims before facts were presented. Others worried it blurred the line between therapy and testimony. But after the footage of Emily stroking Max's fur as she spoke circulated online, public opinion changed. Overnight. Suddenly, lawmakers were calling for expanded K-9 courtroom support in family and trauma cases. Victims' rights groups rallied behind the movement. A proposal nicknamed Emily's Law was drafted in 2 states, aiming to guarantee therapy animal support for child witnesses under the age of 10. Max became the face of a shift in courtroom culture. Officer Jenkins, now in high demand for interviews, stood in front of microphones he never asked for. Max didn't make Emily speak, he told reporters. He made her feel safe enough to want to. Back at the foster home, Emily was drawing again. Since that day in court, crayons had become her new voice. Her pages were filled with dogs, stars, and stick figures. Always 2. One little one. Golden. Kara visited every afternoon now, bringing snacks and asking about her dreams. Do you want to talk more about that night? She asked gently one evening. Emily shook her head. I already told Max. He remembers. Kara smiled. I believe that. She hesitated, then pulled a folder from her bag. Emily, there's something I want to show you. Inside was a picture of a small house. A backyard with a swing. A woman with kind eyes and gray curls holding a book. And beside her, a golden retriever. Emily blinked. Is that Max? No, Kara said softly, but it's his sister. Her name is Lily. Emily's eyebrows rose. Max has a sister? He does. And this family, they're hoping you might want to visit. They heard about your bravery and thought maybe, if you liked them, they could be your new home. Emily studied the photo. Then her lips curved in a smile. Does Lily talk in hearts too? Kara choked on emotion. Yes, honey. She does. Emily looked at the drawing again, then up at Kara. I think Max should meet her first. Just in case? Kara laughed gently. That's a very smart idea. The night before the verdict, the courthouse was quiet, though media vans still buzzed outside. Inside, Emily slept soundly in her temporary bed, Max beside her. In the courtroom, Judge Renner walked the aisle alone. He paused at the witness stand, staring at the seat where Emily had sat, legs too short to touch the floor, voice barely above a whisper, yet powerful enough to change everything. She saved this trial, he murmured aloud. No one else could have done what she did. A court clerk approached. They're ready to deliver the verdict in the morning. The judge nodded. Let's hope the system listens to her, the way Max did. The world would learn the verdict soon. But something greater had already happened. A child had spoken. Truth had been heard. And a golden retriever with eyes full of silent empathy had reminded the world that sometimes justice doesn't come with a gavel. Sometimes it comes on 4 paws, with a heart that hears what words cannot say. The morning sun filtered through the courthouse windows like golden thread. Inside, the tension was electric, quiet, taut, and thick. After 3 days of testimony and deliberation, it was time. The courtroom filled quickly. Journalists took their usual places in the back rows. Court staff whispered to each other nervously. The jurors were already seated when the door at the back opened slowly, and in walked Emily. She was wearing a blue dress with daisies on it and held Max's leash tightly. He walked beside her, calm as ever, his golden fur practically glowing. In the morning light, the room, loud just a second ago, went completely still. Everyone stood, Emily didn't shy away from the attention. Not today. She walked straight to her seat with Max settling by her feet. She wasn't here to testify again. She just wanted to be there. Kara walked behind her, stunned once again by the quiet strength of this little girl. The accused sat across the room, flanked by his defense team. He didn't look at Emily. Couldn't. The weight of what was coming was too much, and this time, even he could feel it. Court is now in session, the bailiff called out. Judge Renner took his seat, glanced once at the jury box, then nodded solemnly. Has the jury reached a verdict? The jury forewoman stood. Her voice was steady. Yes, Your Honor, we have. The court clerk accepted the folded paper and handed it to the judge. He read it silently, then looked out into the room. In the case of the state versus Douglas Wayne, Keller on the charge of felony child endangerment, we find the defendant. A pause. Guilty. Emily looked up sharply at the word. She didn't flinch. She simply looked at Max, who gave her a slow blink, as if to say, It's over now. Judge Renner continued, reading the rest of the verdicts: assault, domestic battery, attempted interference with a minor witness. Guilty, guilty, guilty. Each word struck the room like thunder. Silent tears ran down Kara's face. Jessica Park, the prosecutor, nodded in satisfaction. Not triumph, but relief. Emily looked up at Kara. Did I help? Kara knelt beside her, voice trembling. You did more than help, sweetheart. You made the truth matter. Outside the courtroom, the steps of the courthouse were a flurry of activity. Cameramen, journalists, and emotional spectators gathered. Under the summer sun, reporters scrambled for quotes. Microphones were pushed toward attorneys. But everyone wanted just one glimpse of Emily and Max. And then, like a scene from a dream, the doors opened. Max stepped out first, proudly, wearing a bright red ribbon around his collar. Emily followed, her hands still on his leash. She wasn't overwhelmed. She wasn't hiding. She stood tall beside her best friend. A reporter called out, Emily, how do you feel? The little girl paused. Then, with a small smile and a voice as soft as the wind, she said, Safe. That single word became the next day's headline. SAFE. 3-year-old speaks one word after verdict, and it says everything. A ripple across the nation within hours. The verdict went viral. But more than the criminal case, people clung to the story behind the story. The child who had once been silent, now standing proud. And the golden retriever who never left her side. Social media exploded with support. Messages came in from parents, teachers, therapists, and child advocates around the world. She is so brave. I cried watching her walk out with that dog. This is why we need therapy dogs in every courthouse. Can someone tell Emily she gave my daughter the courage to speak up today? Even celebrities weighed in. A best-selling children's author offered to write a book based on Emily and Max. A major therapy dog foundation pledged to expand their programs to include smaller towns, citing the Emily effect. By the end of the week, 4 more states had introduced legislation to allow therapy animals in courtrooms. The verdict wasn't just a legal win. It was a cultural turning point. A visit to Lily, 3 days after the verdict. Kara picked Emily up from the foster home with a surprise. Are you ready to meet Lily? She asked. Emily's eyes sparkled. Does Max get to come too? Of course, Kara laughed. He's the one doing the interview. They drove through winding roads to a cozy home with white shutters and a front yard full of wildflowers. On the porch sat a silver-haired woman knitting a scarf. And beside her, Lily, a golden retriever just a little smaller than Max, with the same wise eyes. When Emily stepped out of the car, Lily trotted down the steps and sat patiently. Max gave a small woof and wagged his tail. Lily responded with a happy bark. They like each other. Emily gasped. Kara smiled. Looks like it? The older woman, Miss Joanne, greeted them with tea and cookies. She spoke gently, never pushing Emily to talk. She simply invited her in. Emily played with Lily in the backyard while Max lounged in the shade. After an hour, she came running to Kara. Can I stay here, please? I like her. She smells like muffins. Kara burst out laughing. We'll talk to your caseworker, okay? But I'm really glad you like it. That night, as the sun dipped low behind the trees, Emily sat in the grass between Max and Lily. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't afraid of the dark. Meanwhile, Officer Jenkins watched the viral video for the 100th time. The one where Emily said she felt safe. He shook his head in disbelief. I thought I'd seen everything in my 20 years, he told his wife. But that girl and that dog? He patted Max's empty bed beside the couch. Changed the world. A new beginning. A week later, Emily officially moved in with Miss Joanne and Lily. The papers were signed, the room decorated. Her drawings now lined the walls, a family in crayon. Herself, Joanne, Max, and Lily. The words on the picture? My forever pack. Though Max would return to work with Officer Jenkins, he would visit often. And when he did, Emily would always run to meet him with a squeal of joy and a big ribbon for his collar. Because to her, he wasn't just a dog. He was the friend who made her brave. He was the heartbeat that calmed the fear. He was the reason her story had been heard. 2 weeks after the courtroom verdict, something unexpected happened. It didn't come from the judge or the media, or even the district attorney's office. It came from a small group of people in the gallery that day. Lawmakers, educators, child psychologists, and advocates who watched Emily's courage unfold, felt the shift in that courtroom, and knew they had seen something bigger than just one case. They had seen a new way forward. Within a month, a bill was introduced in the state legislature. It was titled, simply, the Child Witness Support Act, informally called Emily's Law. Its goal was clear: ensure that any child under the age of 12 involved in a court case, especially in abuse, neglect, or trauma situations, had the right to request a certified support animal in the courtroom. No more red tape. No more waiting for special approvals. No more debates about prejudice to juries when the truth was that the presence of these animals wasn't manipulation, it was healing. The law stated, all children facing courtroom testimony under traumatic or high-risk circumstances shall be guaranteed access to trained, certified therapy animals during proceedings. These animals shall be allowed in pre-trial interviews, forensic sessions, and during sworn testimony. The proposed legislation picked up steam immediately. Other states watched closely. Max, though he didn't know it, was becoming a symbol. Dog who opened a door when Officer Jenkins was invited to speak in front of the state committee. He brought Max with him. He didn't come in uniform. He didn't bring a speech. He came as a witness, just like Emily had. He placed a photo of Max and Emily on the stand before speaking. This is why I'm here, he began. That little girl, that golden retriever. One couldn't speak, and the other never needed to, but together they did what most adults couldn't. They told the truth. He looked out at the room, rows of men and women with pens and laptops, watching closely. Max didn't change her story. He made her feel safe enough to tell it. That's not a legal loophole. That's justice finally catching up to what children need. Silence followed. Then, applause. The vote passed unanimously. Emily's voice travels back in her new home with Miss Joanne and Lily. Emily's life was changing too, slowly, gently, beautifully. She was now attending a small preschool 2 days a week. She didn't speak much, but she smiled constantly. Her drawings had gone from dark scribbles to bright, blooming colors. Dogs featured in almost every one. Kara visited once a week just to check in, though now she mostly just came to see Emily's newest crayon creations and have tea with Joanne. One day, Kara brought a box. Inside were hundreds of letters. From people all over the country, she said. They saw your story. They wanted you to know they're proud of you. Emily sifted through the colorful envelopes. Some had paw prints on them. Some had glitter. Some were just folded printer paper with shaky handwriting from kids who had been through similar pain. One letter read, Dear Emily, I told my mom what happened to me after I saw you talk to your dog. Thank you for being brave first. Another said, I used to think I had to stay quiet, but you made me believe I could speak. Emily didn't read them all that day, but she smiled every time Kara handed her another. Can I write back? She asked softly. Of course, Kara said. Want me to help? Emily shook her head. No, Max will help. A nation of tales and truth. As the months passed, Emily's Law became the foundation of a growing movement. What had started in one state spread to 5, then 10. Soon, courthouses across the country began implementing programs for therapy dogs, not just for child witnesses, but for domestic violence survivors, traumatized veterans, and others navigating painful legal paths. Max and Officer Jenkins were invited to attend the National Justice and Mental Health Conference. They didn't just speak. They led the keynote. Behind them was a giant photo of Max, lying beneath Emily's feet on the witness stand. It was captioned, Sometimes justice wears fur. At that conference, 26 additional states pledged to adopt therapy dog access laws by the following year. A nonprofit was born, Max and Emily's Voice. Its mission? To train support dogs, advocate for court access, and tell the stories of young survivors like Emily, who found their voices with the help of 4 paws and unconditional love. Max, though aging slightly now, remained the face of the movement. A quiet day at home. One sunny afternoon, Emily and Miss Joanne sat on the porch with Lily curled at their feet. Emily held a book, the children's book based on her own life that had recently been published. It was called Emily and the Dog Who Listened. The pages were filled with watercolor illustrations of a little girl with sad eyes and a golden dog who taught her to speak through love. Miss Joanne watched her read it quietly to Lily, tracing the pages with her tiny finger. You like it? She asked. Emily nodded. It's true, isn't it? It is, Joanne said softly. Later that night, as Emily fell asleep in her room, she whispered something to Lily before closing her eyes. Tell Max I miss him. Max's gift at the courthouse. Officer Jenkins prepared Max for a new kind of role. With more young pups entering the program, Max would now help train them, not through commands, but through presence, through calm, through the unspoken strength only an experienced dog could offer. Jenkins knelt beside him. You've done enough, old friend, he said, brushing his golden coat. Now it's your turn to teach the others. Max looked at him with soft eyes, wagging his tail once, and far away. A little girl in a different town sat nervously in a courtroom hallway, clutching her knees. A new K-9 named Buddy sat beside her, trained by Max, comforted by Emily's story. The girl looked at the dog and whispered, Are you going to stay with me? Buddy simply leaned in, head on her lap. And when the girl walked into the courtroom, the first words out of her mouth were, My dog says it's okay to tell the truth. Years passed, but Max's story never faded. In fact, as time marched forward, his legend only grew. His image was painted on courthouse walls, printed in children's books, carved into bronze outside advocacy centers. To many, Max was more than a dog. He was a bridge between fear and safety, silence and truth, trauma and healing. But Max was still, after all, a dog. And as golden as his heart was, time had begun to dim the shine of his once energetic paws. Officer Jenkins noticed it first. A slow limp on cold mornings. Less excitement when the leash came out. Shorter naps turning into long hours of sleep. He took Max to the vet quietly, without fanfare. The news wasn't unexpected, but it still hit hard. He's nearing retirement. The vet said gently. Arthritis mostly. His heart's strong, but he's earned rest. Jenkins nodded, hiding the lump in his throat. Yeah, he whispered. He's done more than anyone I know. One last visit Kara had kept in touch with Jenkins over the years. So when he called her about Max's condition, she didn't hesitate. I'll bring her, she said. Emily was now 8. Taller, braver, and still inseparable from Lily. Her laugh had grown louder, her eyes brighter. But when Kara told her Max was slowing down, her smile faded. He's okay, right? She asked. He's tired, Kara said. But he misses you. So they drove out together, Emily, Lily, and Kara, to visit Max one last time before. His retirement was official. When they arrived, Max was resting in Jenkins' backyard, his gray-tipped muzzle resting on his front paws. But when he saw Emily, he perked up. His tail thumped twice. She ran to him and hugged him gently, kneeling beside his warm frame. I missed you, she said into his fur. Max didn't bark. He just licked her hand, then rested his head in her lap like he used to in the courtroom. Lily came over, nuzzled him gently, as if saying thank you for watching over her girl before she ever could. For hours they stayed there. No rush, no cameras, no noise. Just a girl, a dog, and the quiet understanding of a bond that changed the world. The ceremony 2 months later, a crowd gathered on the steps of the state capitol building. Reporters, judges, police officers, children's rights advocates, all stood in silence, eyes fixed on the statue under the silk cover. A ceremony was underway, the first of its kind. Today, the governor said at the podium, we honor not just a hero, but a symbol of healing. This monument stands for every child who found their voice, every courtroom that welcomed compassion, every truth that once hid in the shadows, now shining in the light. He paused, and it all began with a little girl and a dog named Max. The curtain dropped, revealing a bronze statue of Max, seated, alert, his eyes cast upward with the child's hand resting on his head. Behind it, carved in stone, Max, the dog who listened, the courage that followed. Emily stood in front of the statue, holding Lily's leash. She wore a ribbon with Max's name on it, and in her hand, a folded drawing. She placed it at the foot of the statue. It was the same one she had made as a foster child. 4 stick figures, 1 golden dog, 1 smaller, labeled me, and the words, my forever pack. She looked up at the statue. Thank you, she whispered. Letters keep coming back at home. Miss Joanne had given Emily her own mailbox, not for bills, not for packages, but for letters addressed to her by children across the country. Even after 5 years, the letters hadn't stopped. Each one told a different story. A boy in Nebraska wrote, I was scared to talk in court, but then I saw your video. Now I have my own buddy dog named Charlie. He kept me calm while I told the judge what my uncle did. You helped me do that. Thank you. A girl in Florida sent a photo. This is me and Lucy. I named her after your story. She sat in the courtroom with me and helped me not cry. I hope I get to meet you one day. Emily kept every single letter in a box under her bed. On difficult days, when old fears crept back or the world felt overwhelming, she would take them out and read them aloud to Lily. Look, she'd say, they're all brave now. Training day Emily had long ago told Miss Joanne what she wanted to be when she grew up. "Do you want to be a teacher?" Joanne asked once. "No," she replied. "A vet?" Emily shook her head. "I want to train courtroom dogs," she said matter-of-factly. "Like Max, so they can help other kids like me." So when she turned 9, Joanne surprised her with her first chance, a volunteer internship at a local therapy animal center. There, Emily learned how to walk new dogs through stressful situations, how to read signs of anxiety, and most of all, how to speak gently to those who were scared to trust. She was a natural. Some said it was instinct. Others said it was because of Max. Either way, the dogs listened to her the way Max once had. A new puppy. A new chapter. One chilly fall morning, Kara showed up on the porch with a smile and a small surprise, wrapped in a fuzzy blanket. Inside was a golden retriever puppy, all ears and clumsy paws. "His name's Echo," Kara said. "He's from Max's final litter. Thought you might want to help train him." Emily gasped. She took the puppy in her arms, who licked her nose excitedly. Lily sniffed him carefully, then gave a small wag of approval. Echo wriggled with joy and immediately flopped beside her feet. "You've got big paws to fill," Emily told him with a grin. "But I think you're going to do great." Meanwhile, at an elementary school in another state, a quiet child sat in a counselor's office, scared to tell the truth. The counselor pulled out a tablet and played a video, Emily's story. The child watched silently. When the video ended, the counselor asked, "Do you want someone like Max to sit beside you in court?" The child nodded. And a door opened again. Years melted like snow in spring. What once felt like wounds became woven into a story of resilience, not erased, but transformed. Emily, once a frightened little girl clutching her knees beneath a courtroom bench, had grown into someone that inspired others to rise. At 17, she was no longer just known for what had happened to her. She was known for what she did with it. The program by now, Max and Emily's Voice, had expanded into a national initiative. Dozens of states had adopted Courtroom K-9 programs. Hundreds of dogs were certified annually, not just to stand beside children in courtrooms, but also to work in forensic interviews, shelters, schools, and child advocacy centers. And at the center of it all was Emily. She had become the youngest board member of the foundation, and the most requested speaker. Her speeches weren't grand or overly polished. They were real, clear, unshakably calm. In one address before Congress, she stood with Echo beside her, now a grown retriever with the same gentle golden fur and wise eyes that reminded everyone of Max. She spoke into the microphone. "When I was 3 years old, I lost my voice. Not because I didn't have one, but because I didn't feel safe enough to use it. Max gave me that safety. He didn't tell me what to say, he just stayed. He stayed until I could speak. That's all any of us ever need. Someone who stays. Please help us keep building places where children feel safe enough to speak." The room was silent. Then someone stood and clapped. Then another. Then everyone. The first dog graduation. That summer, Emily organized the very first official Courtroom K-9 graduation ceremony. 50 dogs from across the country, all certified, trained and ready, sat proudly beside their handlers in a sunny outdoor field surrounded by families, child advocates, and legal professionals. Each dog received a badge and blue ribbon. Each handler received a silver pin that read, "In Max's paw prints." At the end of the ceremony, Emily and Echo stood center stage. She told the story, briefly, of her first day in court, Max's quiet patience, and the moment she felt brave. But this time, she ended with something new. There's a phrase people say sometimes, that dogs are just animals. But I've learned something different. They aren't just anything. They're healers, bridges. Sometimes they're even guardians of truth. She looked down at Echo, who stared. Up at her with a tail wag. Max saved my childhood. Echo helped shape my future. And every dog here today is going to help shape someone else's. The crowd rose in a standing ovation. A visit to the past not long after. Emily and Kara made a quiet visit to a small corner of the city, a courtroom she hadn't entered since. She was a child. The judge who presided over her original case had retired, but agreed to meet her at the empty courthouse. "I wanted to thank you," Emily said, "for letting Max in that day." The judge smiled softly. "I didn't do it for you." Emily blinked. "I did it for truth," the judge said. "But you and Max showed me what truth looks like when it feels safe enough to come out. You both taught me more than a courtroom ever could." They stood in the same hallway where Emily had once sat, knees to her chest, unable to speak. Now she stood tall, her hands gently petting Echo beside her. "Full circle," Kara whispered. The final story a few weeks later. A letter arrived from a small publishing house. They wanted Emily to write a book. Not a children's book this time, but her own memoir. She hesitated at first. What would I even say? She asked Joanne that night over tea. "You'd say the truth," Joanne replied. "And now you know how to tell it." So she did. Her memoir was titled The Dog Who Waited and the Girl Who Spoke. It became a bestseller within weeks. Readers praised it for its honesty, not only about trauma, but about recovery, about the long, uneven, sometimes painful journey between being a victim and becoming a voice. The final chapter ended like this. Max didn't walk me out of the darkness. He waited there until I was ready to walk myself. He didn't need to speak to give me strength. He just stayed. And in staying, he taught me that love, steady, patient, and quiet, can be the loudest voice of all. The museum wall, the National Museum of Justice and Compassion in Washington, D.C., there's a wall titled Voices That Change the System. Among the names listed is a small plaque. Emily Grace Carter, for showing the world that truth is not loud. It is brave. It is small. It is often scared. But with love, it will rise. Beside her name is a bronze paw print labeled simply Max. The next generation Emily, now in college and studying law with a focus on child advocacy, returned one weekend to her hometown to volunteer at the center that first trained her. A little girl named Zoe clung to her arm, nervous before her first court appearance. "Are you scared?" Emily asked softly. Zoe nodded. Echo leaned in, placing his head on the girl's lap. "He does that," Emily smiled. "He used to do it for me too." "Did it help?" Emily nodded. "Every time." Zoe reached for Echo's ear and stroked it gently. "Can I be brave like you?" Emily crouched down and looked her in the eyes. "You already are," she said. "You just need someone to remind you. That's what Echo's here for." As the girl was called into the courtroom, she held tightly to Echo's leash and took a deep breath. Emily watched from the doorway, her heart full and far away. In a small town halfway across the country, a new courtroom opened its doors, complete with a therapy dog room, a play therapy corner, and a plaque that read, "Justice with Heart, where every child has a voice." In the center stood a painting, a little girl and a golden retriever sitting side by side, beneath a sunlit window. And beneath that painting, inspired by Emily and Max, "May every child who enters feel safe enough to speak."